What's up, everybody? I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our off-season The Hurricane Hub discussion for Sunday, not Saturday, February 12th, 2023. Happy Super Bowl Sunday, and happy Sunday, first of all, because usually I post videos on Saturday, but yesterday I decided to take the day off because I wasn't feeling it, so I decided to post today to make up for it. So, since we're posting today and we're doing stuff today, let's get right on with it. Starting off with the satellite of the Atlantic. Noticeable things that are pretty prominent, strong upper level westerly winds. That is typical, and that's why we don't see development this time of year, especially in February. We see this huge low pressure system moving off to the north, and there's another one also by the east coast. And I believe this is if I'm reading this, if I'm remembering correctly, I think there is some snow that is falling within one of the inner mountains of somewhere in here along the east coast. I think along the Carolinas. I saw some winter weather advisories up for the Carolinas, or somewhere along the east coast within some of these places over here. I will go over that in a little bit, but all I know is that I think this storm is producing some snow somewhere, but not for the Northeast still, which is a little bit of a bummer since we have not seen much snow in the Northeast at all this year. But it's whatever, and probably our time for snow will come eventually. Taking a look at a global shot of the SST anomalies, just realized now that it was global and not the Western Hemisphere that I usually have, which is focused on just this region here. But hey, global's good enough, and some of the stuff we could see in the general picture is taking a look at the ENSO. That is beginning to warm up, seeing this kind of warm snake developing along the equatorial Pacific right by the equator. Then we have all of this cooler anomalies associated with the still occurring La Nina, but that might be on its way out soon. As for what is expected, La Nina is kind of dying off a little bit, and we're still seeing La Nina in place, though, as for the time being. That is obviously evident with the SOI dashboard, which has actually rebounded in the last few days. We're now back at a average solidly above 12 points, above 10 points, I should say. 12 points is where we're at right now, and the 30-day average, the 90-day average too, the longer term average too, has even rebounded up back to 14 points. And as we talked about, if you remember the last discussion, we talked about strong trade winds, which could potentially help kind of bring the atmospheric response to this La Nina back a little bit. And that's exactly what is happening. So until this does fall off, once again, I'm just going to continue to say the same thing. El Nino will not be in a rush, if you will, to set in for this year. While this SOI dashboard is still solidly in the range of solidly above 7 points, which is the threshold that they use, positive 7 points for La Nina. And hey, if you even look at the Nino 3.4 index of the SST anomalies in the Nino 3.4 region for the ENSO, once again, if you're not familiar with the Nino 3.4 is, it's roughly, let's go back here, somewhere in this area right over here. And why the Nino 3.4 region specifically? Well, that's where we measure the SST anomalies. That's the prominent SST anomaly measure for the calculation for this whole ENSO state as a whole. So that's why it's the Nino 3.4 region. And take a look at the anomalies, and that too, you notice basically since November we've kind of been in this stagnant place, no real growth or weakening or strengthening. We would have these periodic times where we would see a increase in the sea surface temperature anomalies and a decrease, strengthening La Nina, then a point where we rebounded in the SST anomalies, but no real change, especially since November basically. And that is because of this. The SOI dashboard still remaining strongly positive. That means the trade winds in the Pacific are still strong and are still prevalent for La Nina to remain. And until that changes, El Nino will not come. But there is actually an expected change that could happen with the trade winds coming very soon. If we take a look at this tweet from Dylan Jariwala, I think that's how I pronounce the last name. Probably not, but excuse me if I did mispronounce it. And he does say trade winds across the equatorial Pacific have reached their zenith in amplitude as the MJO constructively interfered with the background La Nina state. We just had a MJO situation that did allow for these trade winds to kind of re-strengthen, because this does not happen on its own. This is in contribution to stuff like MJO and other atmospheric occurrences that do help with La Nina to remain in place. And that he does mention that the trade winds have recently spiked up because of MJO helping the La Nina, the background La Nina state. But the medium and to long range forecasts are now beginning to depict easterlies finally relaxing for a short period of time. And he does go on to say that the relaxation seems to be sparked by the progression wave of a Kelvin wave across the Pacific Ocean. I think somewhere he does mention, it's moving a lot faster as it loses favorability with coupling with the negative ENSO. He does mention it here. That's the MJO that's been kind of stuck in the Western Pacific and the maritime continent, which is also a reason why we've not really seen any change with the La Nina, because usually MJO, when it's in the maritime continent, which is roughly where I think this area is, that usually does help with enhancing trades in the Pacific, and in return, we see La Nina remain. But you do notice, we do see that the MJO does try to make a run towards moving across the Pacific. It obviously moves a lot slower since it's not within the realm of a La Nina base state, but it still does occur. And you could also see it on this map here, the MJO showing does move across the Pacific, then it kind of does stick around phases 7 and 8, roughly closer to the null phase than rather in the actual MJO. But still, that is enough that that could potentially trigger a period of more relaxed trade winds in the Pacific. However, he does mention here, Dylan does go on to mention that this won't be enough to kill the La Nina, because trade winds won't be weakened for long enough. But he does say that in terms of El Nino development, the warm pool, the part of the reason that is really getting the talk of El Nino is this huge warm pool in the Pacific. And that reminds me, I should actually bring this graphic up for next week for us to take a look at next week. There's a huge this huge warm pool of very warm anomalies. If that does make it to the surface, that is what will help with El Nino. But we don't have anything to really support it reaching the surface yet. However, with this next incoming batch of weaker trade winds that are relatively weaker than the trade winds that we have been seeing, this could potentially allow for this to maybe expand a little bit and allow for it to intensify. So when we do get coupling with El Nino, this would actually have a chance to reach to the surface and potentially produce a pretty potent El Nino. Very potent, especially by the looks of that warm pool, but still not enough to see the La Nina die off. And until we see a real strong westerly wind burst, I keep on repeating it, so until we see westerly wind bursts enough to get these anomalies in the Nino 3.4 index above 0.5, negative 0.5, we're not really going to see a rush for El Nino to come in. However, there has been talk about this, which has just been released, the official NOAA CPC ENSO probability. This is issued for the February issue. Notice something that you do see, El Nino is now up to 60% of a chance, especially by the time we get to this period. You know what that is, August, September, October. That is the important period that we watch for hurricane season. We're up to a 60% chance for then. And a lot of people are talking about it, say, maybe we could see El Nino develop. But I think the main reason why they show such a very strong signal for El Nino is, take a look at what the CFS has. This is the latest run. If you don't remember, the CFS does run every single day, so it gives us a different input on what the conditions are basically every day, so we have a fresh idea of what to expect, and multiple ideas too of what to expect with the Enso. And notice something: the CFS has been, especially in the most recent run, has been very aggressive with showing a potent El Nino up to 1 degree Celsius above normal. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was the reason why the CPC went pretty aggressive, up to a 60% chance of potentially El Nino developing by the time we get to the peak of the hurricane season. Heck, by the time we get to June, July, August, the start of the hurricane season, they already have chances for El Nino near 50%, and the chances are, in fact, higher than neutral chances. So that's probably why they do have a hint of potentially seeing a El Nino by this season. Once again, do want to mention, though, the CFS does have a pretty warm bias when it comes to ENSO and SST anomalies. So maybe this could be wrong, and if this is wrong, this will really change the whole entire picture of what type of ENSO state we could be seeing by the time we get to hurricane season. And all that is really far out to really be confidently talking about it right now. It's only February, so things could really change, but at least with the signs that I'm seeing right now, what can I say? El Nino is we really have to see a change in the atmosphere right now if we want to see an El Nino developing as quickly as the CFS shows it developing, and already getting to a potent El Nino by the time we get to July. That if we really want to see something like that to occur, all I will say is that gotta see this trend in the opposite direction that it's trending right now, and we'll have to see that persist too, because we could have a period of weaker trades in the Pacific that kind of help the La Nina kind of weaken a little bit, but if it's not persistent, we're not going to see things reverse and head towards El Nino. So that's what I'm going to say about that much right now, but we still got a long ways, so hurricane season things could still definitely change, and we could be looking at a completely different picture even as early as next month. Even within a month, we could be looking at something completely different. Moving away from tropics, though, since there's nothing else to talk about besides that, taking a look at the National Weather Service homepage, you could see basically what's going on in the nation right now. Nothing much, except we do have high wind watches for the Southwest. I think this is in New Mexico and California and parts of Nevada too. And then this is what I was talking about. We have a winter weather advisory along with a few winter storm warnings in effect for interior North Carolina and some of Virginia as well, including the Northwest, and some winter storm watches in effect too for the Northwest as well, including Oregon and even parts of Washington too. So not much going on besides that. And especially when it comes to severe weather, not really seeing much in the way of severe weather at all in the next 3 days. But let's see what the next 4 days have. Next 4 to 8 days have. There actually might be a chance between days 4 and 5. Maybe some sort of frontal system moving through. We could see some severe weather move through. So maybe things might get a little active then. But after that, not looking at too much occurring in the world of weather. And of course, nothing much will occur right now. It's only February, and especially when it comes to tropics, it is still early on, so it isn't really much of a thing to worry about right now when it comes to El Nino and La Nina and how that might affect the season. It's only February, and there's a lot of time for change. Heck, in terms of change, we could even see the models between now and March completely swing in the opposite direction and then start going back to showing a La Nina once again for the season, or we could see the La Nina dramatically weaken by the time we get to March, and we're looking at a Super Nino for this year. We don't know. It's really something that requires time watching over the course of weeks and months before we come to a more clear conclusion, because it is especially February, and right now, since it's only early in the year, and usually on average we don't get an idea of what to expect really till March or April, it really does make sense sense that there's a lot of uncertainty and we can't really come to accurate and clear conclusions right now. So it really is just a matter of waiting and seeing what will happen exactly this year. But we have to watch, and we'll see, and we'll keep you posted right here. So if you want to keep posted, why not subscribe or like? I always mention that every single week, but it is important, especially if you want to keep updates on ENSO and throughout the hurricane season too. Please like and subscribe and turn on notifications whenever I post. You can get the notification right at the second that I post, so that is really important that you do that as well. But that is it for now. I'm Danilo Evangelista. Enjoy Super Bowl Sunday, no matter who you who you're cheering for. I'm not going to say who I'm cheering for because I don't want to get controversial. But whoever you're cheering for, even if they don't win, enjoy the week ahead, and we'll be back here next Saturday.